Good afternoon, friends. In my last video, when I was showing my inverter installation, which is working out great, I actually upgraded to the 2000 watt model a few weeks ago, and I'm no longer hitting overcurrent protection whenever I'm charging my Jackery battery. So now I'm able to charge up my Jackery battery while I'm driving. And for a quick tip, if you're driving a truck, Chevy specifically, there's different driving modes. So there's like a sport, snow, normal options. That doesn't actually make the truck stay in a lower gear very well. But what you can do is turn it into trailer mode, and it'll keep it about approximately 1 gear lower, so it keeps the RPMs up, so you don't run your battery down off when you're running your inverter. But that's not what this video is about. So I've been running a diesel heater for about 3 months, and I am just totally blown away with it. It's working fantastically. So it's very basic, and the big advantage about it is how little power it uses, and also how little fuel it uses. The way that I use it, which if the temperature's about above, 23, 24 degrees, I sleep without the heater on. I just use my sleeping bag as a blanket. But if it gets below 20, it starts getting pretty uncomfortable. So I fire up the heater all night if it's under 20 degrees. But then if it's not, I usually just flip it on when I wake up in the morning. I'm just getting ready for the day. So I'm going to flip the camera around, and I'm going to show you a quick show of the unit. So this is the unit that I'm using. It's a Silvel, and like a lot of cheap Chinese things, you can buy this thing under like 10 different names. So you might find it under different names or whatever. It's all the same unit. You can even get them in different formats. So mine is, of course, the long rectangular format. This one works for me because, as you see, it fits really nicely along my bed, and it doesn't get out in my living space at all. So it fits really nicely, and it's super compact in my use case. The basic setup was pretty easy. With this unit, both the air intake and the exhaust run out the bottom, and it's really the middle of the bottom. So in this format, it's really best if your use case allows you to run the exhaust and the air intake through the bottom of whatever you're installing it in. So basically how this thing works is really similar to how a car heater works. So then inside here, there's a little combustion chamber, and there's a fuel pump, and it just drips diesel fuel into the combustion chamber. And as it burns, the heat comes out the port right here, the fan. And it puts out a pretty intense amount of heat. It's honestly overkill for my use case. I actually have the problem of it being too hot rather than too cold in my use case. So hopefully I can get a view of this. The exhaust comes out the very middle. Yeah, that's silver right there. That's the exhaust port. So all I had to do was take a hole saw and drill a hole in my floor through the bed of my truck. And I was lucky. I was able to hit my spare tire with the exhaust port. Not the tire itself, but the holes in the rim. So my exhaust port goes through the two of my spokes of my spare wheel. So it keeps away from anything that could be heat sensitive, like brake lines, electrical cables, stuff like that. So if you're installing in a truck, see if you can hit your get inside your spare wheel with that exhaust, so it keeps it nice and stable and away from anything touchy to heat. So when you buy this unit, you're gonna find it. You're gonna see the unit, a air intake, and an exhaust. So the air intake is optional. There's ups and downs to using the air intake or not using it. And so the positive using the air intake is that it's going to help with moisture is the main thing. So if you don't use the fresh air intake, you are going to get humidity in your area. But the positive is that you're going to be recirculating the hot air. So it does make it more fuel efficient, and you don't need to use it as hard. The installation is super easy. What it runs off of, and this goes for all the units, all these units work pretty much the same way, and it's the same basic idea. They just look different. So what it runs off of is just simple 12 volt. So what I have here are ring terminals, and these ring terminals go to so what I have is ring terminal to female cigarette lighter, 12 volt. Then I have a male to male cigarette lighter that goes to my Jackery right here. So this is the plug to my heater, so off, on. Then just hit my 12 volt light. And the heater's on. And like I said, this thing runs off diesel. The tank is pretty large. I think, I don't know what the exact spec is, but I think it's about 1.5 gallons approximately. And it's kind of funny shaped with this particular form factor. I would be filling it up, and I would think that I was about to overfill it, but really I think it's a very strange shape. I feel like it's kind of like this shaped. So when it looks half full, it's not actually half full, it's like a third full. And there's way more volume to put in it. So I just fill it up until I start seeing it get close to the top, like to the actual top of the nozzle. A complaint I would have about this model is the plastic that they use in the fuel tank is very flexible, and with all gas cans and diesel cans having those safety nozzles on them, where you kind of have to push down and then deactivate some kind of safety notch, it tends to bend the plastic a little bit, and I actually have a little bit of a permanent deformity in mine. It's kind of hard to see on camera, but it's dented in. So kind of what I've tried to do is kind of push down just as lightly as I can, just to get the safety off the gas can, and then just hold the safety down with your hand, so that way you're not having to rest the weight of the gas can on that kind of fragile nozzle. That's kind of disappointing, to be honest. So, like I said before, the benefit of this is how little power it uses. So I'll walk you through a quick skinny of kind of the firing up process of this thing. So when you turn it on, I'm not going to turn it on right now. When you turn it on, it goes into a glow plug setting where it's warming up the combustion chamber using a glow plug. That's where you're going to see your biggest power draw, which most people who use these kinds of units are running them off of a portable battery of some sort. So you're going to see your highest power draw at that point. About 100 to 120 watts, I usually see it when it has that glow plug on. But once the combustion chamber is up to temperature, the glow plug turns off because the flame is self-sustaining then. And then the power goes down to almost nothing. I think when it's running, it runs between 5 and 10 watts once it's up to temperature, and once it's up to temperature, basically. It just sips electricity after that. So now I will walk you through let's see if I can get some more light on this. So now I'll show you kind of the basics of how this thing fires up. I'm going to have to use some extraneous light, because the screen on this is not exactly bright. So we see here, you have 4 buttons here, and this goes for all of the units. Most of these diesel heater units, use this same control panel. So controls are the same no matter what. Okay, I'm back. This screen is very, very dim and it's very hard to be able to see it in the daytime. So what you'll see here is 4 buttons. So you have kind of like a selector button right there. It helps you when you're going through different menus. Okay, I never really used that. It's very strange. This thing has a lot of weird, like, time setting options, which is strange for a unit like this because you kind of turn it on and off, and every time you turn it on and off, everything resets. It's like a old car stereo. Yeah, the obvious power button right there. Then you have your up and down menu options, and these are to cycle through the different modes of heating. So this thing can run on either by temperature or by hertz, and by hertz I mean the fuel rate. So it can run from 1.4 hertz up to I think 3.5 hertz. And I'm not sure which one's better. In my use case, I've been recently just leaving it on the lowest fuel rate, and because my space is so small, it really is fine the way it is with the lowest rate. Because when I turn it on, the lowest it'll go is 48 degrees Fahrenheit. So what it tends to do is go nuts and kick out a whole bunch of heat and use a whole bunch of fuel, and then I end up just too hot. So the way you get through... So the important menus that I use, the important options that I use, is thermostat mode or temperature, or thermostat mode or fuel rate mode. And to cycle between the two, you need to click the 2 top buttons at the same time. So if I click them both, you can see there's temperature mode. 8 degrees C is 48 degrees Fahrenheit. Or go into fuel rate mode and you see the fuel rate. So actually the lowest it goes is 1.7 hertz. So about 1.5 clicks of fuel per second. So those are honestly the only controls that I use. Once you have it in the mode you want it, you can, click through them. It's pretty basic. Not a particularly advanced machine. So once you have it on the mode you want, whether thermostat or fuel rate, at that point, all you need to do is flip it on. So all you do is hold the power button down, and it clicks on. So now it's going to start making noises. So at this point, if you hear that, I'm going to turn my light off. So if you see that little red symbol, that means the glow plug is on. This is the point where the unit uses the most electricity. So let's see what it's doing. So right now it's using 73. Oh, it failed. Another thing to know about these diesel heaters is that sometimes they don't fire up on the first try. So just gonna click it on again. The fan will start. Glow plug is back on. Let's give it a minute to see if it'll fire up. So as it's going through this, it's gonna be using the most electricity that it'll use. So 50, 65, it kind of hovers around a little bit. And it failed again. Alright, so now the combustion chamber is now warmed up enough where the pump has started. I'm sure you guys can hear that, but I'll hold you next to it. So that's the hertz rate. So every click is a little bit more fuel going in. And glow plug is still on. Now at this point, it's gonna start going through a warm-up process. And on this little model of the unit right here, you're gonna see temperature levels. So for the diesel heater to keep its flame, it has to reach its highest temperature level. So in a little bit, we'll see it go, I think it's a yellow bar right here. Then it goes up to yellow, yellow, orange, orange, red, red, and then it's up to its temperature. They'll go across on the x-axis right there. And now as you hear, now the fan is on. So now the fan's actually blowing air. And with all this going on, this is probably actually the highest amount of electricity it'll be taking. Let's see what it is. Yeah, so 130 watts. And this process takes about 5 minutes to get up to its temperature. Yeah, so you see there, the first bar's on right there. So as it warms up, it'll just click, 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 click across there, and then it's up to temperature. And as it's going through this mode, the fan is gonna ramp way, way up, and the fuel rate is gonna go way up to get it up to temperature. Once it's warmed up, it'll drop down to the setting that you gave it. So in my case, 1.7 hertz. And as you see there, went up another notch. So now I'm gonna go ahead and just let this run until it gets up to temperature, and then I'll show you guys how little electricity that it uses. Now, while it's doing that, I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys what it sounds like from the outside. A lot of people who do this kind of living kind of like to be a little bit stealthy. So here's the sound that it makes while it's running. It's just a little bit of a whistle noise. We'll see if it picks up. So yeah, not too bad at all. It's honestly such a kind of a strange sound for it coming from a vehicle that you really wouldn't notice it if you're just walking by. I wouldn't think. At least I wouldn't notice. But now it looks like it's warmed up, and I can show you what kind of power draw that it has. Now that the unit's up to temperature, it's now dropped back down to the fuel rate that I gave it. And so now at this point, the unit's just gonna run as long as you want it to. Running it on these settings, I get, if I run it all night, I get about 3 nights worth of fuel out of this system off of one tank. And like I said, it's like a little over a gallon tank, 1 to 1.5, something like that. But now I'll show you the impressive part. I'll show you the power draw, or the little bit of power draw. Yep, like I said, 10 watts. And this efficiency comes from the fact that to heat this thing, all you're running is a little tiny fuel pump and a little fan. My final things to talk about in the daytime, at least, is just a couple of safety factors to think about when you're using one of these things. I thought it would be a good idea, and I was thinking about doing this, was to try and run the exhaust kind of through the gaps of my tailgate, or around my window or something like that. And my thoughts were that, how hot could the exhaust get? You know, it's not under compression or anything. It's not like an engine. It's just a flame. And while flames are hot, you know, it wouldn't get nearly as hot, I would think, as a car exhaust, for example, because it's not nearly as much oomph going through it. The answer is really freaking hot. I watched some other videos and people were like burning things in their truck or vans with those exhaust pipes. So you really need to make sure that exhaust pipe has some room around it and make sure it's not touching anything that's heat sensitive, because that thing gets smoking hot. Speaking of hot, that fan gets hot. Not the fan itself, but the air coming out of it. The air coming out of it, even at a very low setting, is really hot. Like if you had, like, for example, thing of bread. The heat coming out of this heater would probably, I don't know if it would burn the plastic, but it would definitely melt it. Especially, like, I've had things all the way over here. And they got really hot. Like, my phone cables, whenever I'm sleeping and my phone's on my desk, my phone cables get almost a little bit uncomfortably warm sometimes. Not enough to be threatened to melt or anything, but you really need to watch for the heat that comes out of this thing, because it's pretty smoking hot. Like, it's probably, I don't know, 150 degrees or something like that. So you really need to keep plastics away from it. Wood's fine, of course. But yeah, plastics, really be careful of that. Don't get anything in front of that fan that can't get very hot. So that's the basics of the diesel heater and the kind of the functions of it. Next time I see you guys, I'm gonna finish this video at nighttime. And I'm going to... So tonight, the reason I picked today to make this video was it's supposed to get down to about 10 degrees tonight. So not super cold, but the coldest it's gotten so far here where I am. And I'm going to do an experiment where I'm just going to lay in my bed without covers on and not preheated or anything, and just fire this thing up and see how long it takes to get comfortable. So I'm going to cut it off for the daytime part, and I will see you guys at nighttime, spooky time. Alright, so we're not at the coldest part of the night by any means. Right now it is 18 degrees outside, and I just got the heater through its warm-up cycle, so it's up to operating temperature, so now it's at its regular fuel rate. And again, this is my first time using it at the super low fuel rate without using the thermostat. While it's been below 20 degrees. So now that's gotten out of its warm-up cycle and it's kind of quieted it up a lot. Now I'm going to see how long it'll take to get from... right now, even though it's through its warm-up cycle and it's just kind of ticking along now, it's still pretty freaking cold in here. So now I'm going to keep the timer going and see how long it takes for it just to get comfy. I don't have a thermometer back here, but I'm just gonna call it when I just consider it to be comfortable. And by the way, the amount of time it took to go from from a cold start to operating temperature was about 5.5 minutes. So from 18 degrees to being all warmed up in 5.5 minutes, I think that's pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and check in back with you guys once it's comfy back here, and I'll give you guys the final time and my closing remarks on the topic. Alright, so we got our numbers. So after another 25 minutes, it's what I would consider to be comfortable back here. So that would make for a total of half an hour kind of using the slow roast technique, which I would recommend in van camping or a truck camping situation, because using the thermostat really makes it get really hot really fast, and this thing puts out quite a bit of heat, and it really has a tendency to get too hot rather than not hot enough. So again, the numbers were starting from 19 degrees, 5 minutes for it to get through its warm-up cycle, then another 25 minutes to get to what I would consider comfy. And throughout that whole time, the thing is blowing hot air, so it's kind of... You'll get like little spurts of chills and little spurts of warmth as it's warming up, as the warm air circulates. So in conclusion, with these diesel heaters, I can't recommend them highly enough. You can get them in all kinds of formats, and really the tricky part will be just picking what format works best for you. For me, this unit where the exhaust runs out the bottom is the best one for me in a truck camping situation. But if you're using it for a tent, you'd want to have one where the exhaust comes out the back, so you can run it outside the tent and then pipe the warm air inside, and then keep the unit outside the tent because of the exhaust temperature. And for the price, you just can't really beat it. And the tiny bit of electricity it uses, it really doesn't use much fuel. Again, I would say running it for 8 to 10 hours a night on using this slow roast technique, you can get like 3 nights out of a tank of gas in the unit. So what I do is I just keep a 5-gallon tank of gas of diesel in my truck, and yeah, I just refill it, and it lasts for a long time. And then I just fill up my diesel can when I fill up my truck. Again, the prices range from like $100 to $150, depending on the timing and what model you're getting. So it's a great bargain. It's pretty simple to set up, and I don't know, they're just really great. Very, very, very effective and a very good option for heating. You can even use this for heating like a, kind of an off-the-grid cabin or something like that. They're really great. So this is all the basics of the diesel heater setup, using, and everything. And again, if it works for you, if you think it would work for you, it's a great option. So anyway, that's kind of a rundown of the diesel heaters. Hope this information was useful for you guys, and I'll see you later. See ya.